blade was at my throat before I even heard him move. I did not scream. Screaming gets you killed faster than silence ever does. I had learned that lesson within my first week on this world, and I had never forgotten it since. "Where is the king?" the wolf hissed, his breath hot and sharp against my ear. "You serve his table. You know where he sleeps. Tell me, human, or I open your neck right here in this hallway, and let the rats find you." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Kael'thir hearing was better than any human's, better than any machine I had ever known, but I kept my voice flat and calm, the way I always did. "He is not in his chambers tonight," I said. "He never sleeps in the same room twice. You should know that. You are Pack." The wolf's grip tightened on my arm. His claws were long enough to leave marks even through the sleeve of my uniform. I did not flinch. Flinching invites more pressure. I had learned that too. "You are lying," he growled. "I don't know how," I said, and that was the truest thing I had said all night. That was the moment the guards found us, torches blazing down the stone corridor, and the wolf let go of me and ran into the dark like smoke through a cracked window. I stood there alone, breathing hard, my hands shaking now that no one important was watching. It had started like that, but to understand why a stranger tried to kill me in a hallway of the Alpha King's own palace, I have to take you back further, to the beginning, to the day I stopped being cargo and became something the wolves did not have a word for. My name is Ellen Marsh. I do not remember the exact day my ship was destroyed, only the sound of alarms and the cold that came after. I was one of 400 colonists aboard a transport vessel bound for a new settlement when raiders tore through our hull like it was paper. Most of the people I knew did not survive that night. I survived because my escape pod drifted for 3 days, before a Kael'thir trading vessel picked it up, scanned me, and decided I was worth more alive than dead. They called it rescue. It was really just a different kind of capture. I was sold at an auction on a station called the Threshold, along with tools, weapons, and crates of raw ore. Nobody there cared that I had once studied engineering, that I had a family somewhere in the stars who probably thought I was dead, that I had dreams before all of this happened. I was simply human, female, unmodified, a line item on a manifest. The one who bought me was King Draven Ashcolt, ruler of the Kael'thir Dominion, a species of tall, sharp-featured people with wolf-like eyes and senses that could smell a lie the way a human smells smoke. I did not meet him that first day. I was handed to a steward, given a uniform, and told my job was to serve in the royal kitchens and, when required, attend the king's private hall. I expected to disappear into the background of that palace, the way most servants did. I did not expect to become the only person the most powerful man on the planet actually trusted. The Kael'thir court was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Every hallway gleamed with polished stone. Every banner carried the mark of some ancient pack alliance, and every single person smiled at you while quietly calculating how useful or dangerous you might be. I watched generals bow to the king with perfect respect, and then whisper about his weaknesses the moment his back was turned. I watched nobles offer him gifts wrapped in silk and hidden threats. And I watched Draven himself, sitting at the head of a long stone table, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He was not what I expected a king to look like. He was broad-shouldered and quiet, with pale gold eyes that missed nothing, and a voice that rarely rose above a low, even tone. He did not shout to be obeyed. He simply had to look at someone and they obeyed. But underneath all of that command, I noticed something the others seemed blind to. He never fully relaxed, not once, not even alone. I found out why on the 3rd week, when I brought a tray of food into his private study late at night and found him standing by the window, staring out at the city lights with his shoulders tight like a man bracing for a blow that never came. "You should not be here this late," he said without turning around. His hearing had caught my footsteps long before I entered the room. "The kitchen sent food," I said. "You have not eaten since morning. How do you know that?" "Because I counted the trays." He turned then, studying me the way a predator studies something unfamiliar in its territory, unsure whether to trust it or destroy it. Every servant in this palace watches me to see what I might give them. Favor, position, protection. "What do you want, human?" "Nothing," I said, setting the tray down. "I want to go back to bed before the head cook notices I am gone." He almost smiled. Almost. That is either very foolish or very honest. Where I come from, those are usually the same thing. I left before he could answer. I did not think much of the exchange at the time. I did not know that a single honest sentence, spoken by someone whose heartbeat did not spike with hidden intentions, would be the rarest thing in his entire kingdom. Over the following months, small moments built into something larger, though neither of us called it anything at first. I began bringing him food without being summoned, because I noticed the days he forgot to eat were always the days his council meetings ran long and cruel. I began staying in the room during difficult negotiations, not because anyone asked me to, but because my quiet presence seemed to steady something in him that nothing else could reach. His generals threatened him with polite words wrapped around old grudges. His own blood relatives measured his throne the way a hunter measures a wounded animal, and through all of it, I said very little, because Kael'thir's senses could read tension in a human voice just as easily as they could read it in one of their own, and staying calm was the only weapon I had. What I did not expect was that my silence would become the thing he leaned on. "You do not lie," he told me one evening, months into my service, as I refilled his cup in an empty hall. "I have listened to 1,000 voices rise and fall with deception. Yours never does. Even now, when you serve me, there is no hidden calculation in your blood." "I have nothing to hide," I said. "I am not fighting for your throne. I only want to survive it." "That," he said quietly, "makes you the only honest creature in this entire palace." I did not realize then how dangerous that honesty would become to the people around him. The Kael'thir court ran on bloodlines and rivalries older than the stone walls that housed them. Draven's younger brother, a sharp-eyed noble named Corran Vale, had wanted the throne since before Draven was crowned. Corran was clever in the way that dangerous men often are, patient, charming, always saying the right thing in front of the right people. He treated me kindly whenever we crossed paths, complimenting my work, asking gentle questions about my life before the Dominion. I did not think much of it. I assumed he was simply less cruel than the others. I was wrong. It happened on a night I was not supposed to be in that part of the palace at all. I had taken a wrong turn while delivering supplies to a storage wing near the western towers, a place normally reserved for senior staff. Voices drifted from behind a half-closed door, low and urgent, speaking of the coming Blood Moon audience, a traditional gathering where the king's personal guard was reduced out of respect for ancient custom. I heard Corran's voice among them, calm and steady, arranging something that made my stomach twist with a fear I could not yet name. I did not understand every detail. I understood enough. They meant to move against Draven during that ceremony, when his guard would be thinnest, and tradition would keep outsiders from questioning why certain doors stood unlocked. I left as quietly as I had come, my heart hammering, and I told no one, not because I did not care, but because in that palace, information was currency, and the wrong person overhearing my warning could turn it into a death sentence for me, before it ever reached the king. I waited until I could speak to Draven alone, 3 days later, in the same private study where our conversations always felt safest. "I need to tell you something," I said, "and I need you to believe me even though I have no proof." He set down the papers in his hands and looked at me with the full weight of his attention, the way he never looked at his own advisors. "I always believe you. You are the only one who has never given me a reason not to." So I told him everything I had heard. The names, the timing, the Blood Moon audience. I watched something in his expression shift from calm control into a colder, sharper focus, the look of a predator recalculating the shape of a threat. "You understand what this means," he said quietly. "If you are wrong, I will have accused my own brother of treason, based on the word of a human servant. The court will tear us both apart." "I am not wrong," I said. "I know what I heard." He studied me for a long moment, and then he nodded, slowly, the way a man nods when he has already decided to trust someone completely, and is only now admitting it to himself. Then we prepare quietly. No accusations, no warnings that could reach the wrong ears, just readiness. That was the night everything changed between us. Though neither of us said so out loud, he no longer simply tolerated my presence. He needed it, and that need painted a target on my back that I did not fully understand until the wolf grabbed me in the hallway days later, demanding to know where the king slept, ready to open my throat for an answer I would never give him. The days leading up to the Blood Moon audience were the tensest I had ever lived through, more frightening than the night my transport ship was destroyed, because this danger wore a friendly face and walked the same halls I did every single day. I served meals to nobles who smiled at me while planning to remove the man I served. I passed messages I did not fully understand between Draven and a handful of guards he trusted enough to loop into the quiet preparations. I barely slept, jumping at every shadow, every footstep that lingered too long outside my small room near the kitchens. Draven did not tell the full court what he suspected. He could not risk Corran discovering the plan had been exposed before the moment came. Instead, he made small adjustments that would look like nothing to anyone who was not searching for them. He requested that 2 of his most loyal guards attend the audience despite tradition. He asked that the western entrance, the one nearest the storage wing where I had overheard the plotters, be sealed for unrelated repairs. He never accused his brother. He simply built a quiet net around the ceremony, thread by thread, and waited. I was not meant to be anywhere near the throne room on the night of the blood moon audience. Servants were dismissed hours before the ceremony began, sent back to their quarters while the nobles gathered under torchlight. But something in me refused to stay away. I told myself I only wanted to check the kitchen stores one last time, a lie so thin I almost laughed at myself for using it. The truth was simpler and harder to admit. I was afraid, and the only place my fear made any sense was near him. I was passing through the servants' corridor that ran alongside the throne room, hidden behind a screen of carved stone, when the wolf caught me. I do not know if he mistook me for someone with real information, or if he simply saw an easy target in the dark. His hand closed around my arm before I even registered his presence, and the blade appeared at my throat a heartbeat later. "Where is the king?" he demanded. And that is where my story to you began, in that hallway, with a stranger's claws pressing hard enough into my skin to draw a thin line of pain. I did not tell him anything. I could not have, even if I wanted to, because I truly did not know exactly where Draven stood at that moment. But my refusal to answer bought exactly enough time for the guards Draven had quietly stationed near that very corridor to hear the commotion and come running. The wolf released me and fled into the shadows, and I stood there shaking, my hand pressed to the shallow cut at my throat, listening to my own heartbeat pound louder than anything else in the world. Word of the attack reached Draven within minutes. I learned later that the moment his guards told him a human servant had been threatened near the western corridor, something in him went very quiet and very still, the way a storm goes still right before it breaks. He did not wait for the formal accusation. He did not wait for proof beyond what he already carried in his own gut. He walked into that throne room in the middle of the blood moon audience, in front of every noble gathered under the torchlight, and he named his brother's plot out loud. Corrin, to his credit, did not panic. He stood, spread his hands, and tried to turn the moment into a performance, insisting the accusation was madness, that a king who trusted the word of a human servant over his own blood had lost his right to the throne entirely. For one terrible moment, I thought his calm confidence might actually work, that the gathered nobles might believe him simply because he sounded so certain. Then the guards Draven had stationed near the storage wing brought forward two of the conspirators they had quietly captured only hours earlier, men who had been waiting near the sealed western entrance with weapons they had no right to carry into a ceremony meant for peace. Their presence alone told the story louder than any words could have. Corrin's calm expression cracked, just slightly, just enough for a room full of predators trained to read the smallest signs of fear to see the truth underneath it. Kael'thir loyalty, I had learned, was never permanent. It bent toward strength and away from failure with terrifying speed. The moment Corrin's plan was exposed as broken, the very nobles who might have quietly supported him began stepping back, distancing themselves, some even offering renewed declarations of loyalty to Draven, as if they had never doubted him at all. Within the hour, the rebellion that had been building in the shadows for weeks fell apart entirely, not with violence, but with the simple, cold math of wolves recognizing which side had already won. I did not witness most of that final confrontation. I had been taken to the healer's wing to have the shallow cut on my throat treated, my hands still trembling long after the physical danger had passed. It was there, sitting alone on a stone bench with a bandage pressed against my skin, that Draven found me. He did not come as a king that night. He came the way he always did in our quiet moments, simply as a tired man who had spent his whole life surrounded by people he could never fully trust. "You could have told that wolf anything," he said, sitting down across from me. "You could have given him false information, sent him running in the wrong direction, saved yourself the blade at your throat. Instead, you said nothing at all." "I told you once," I said. "I don't know how to lie, not even when it would have been easier." He studied me for a long moment, the same way he had that very first night in his study. Only now there was no uncertainty left in his expression, only something quieter and more settled. "Do you understand what you have become in this palace? A servant with no army, no title, no bloodline, and yet you were the reason I survived tonight. You are the only person in this entire kingdom whose heartbeat has never once told me a different story than her words." "I did not do it to become anything," I said honestly. "I just could not stay silent about that." "I know," he said. "That is exactly why it mattered." In the days that followed, the court tried to understand what to call me. I was not a noble. I was not a warrior. I held no official position that fit neatly into their ancient traditions of pack and hierarchy. Some of the older advisors seemed uncomfortable that a human servant had become someone the king so clearly depended on, but whatever discomfort lingered in the halls, it did not change the simple truth that had settled quietly into place between us. Draven Ashcolt ruled over wolves who had spent their entire lives learning to smell deception, to read hidden motives in every voice and heartbeat around them. And because of that, he had spent his entire life unable to fully trust a single person surrounding his throne, until a human girl with no hidden agenda, no ambition beyond survival, and no ability to disguise her own honesty, walked quietly into his world and stayed. I still work in that palace. I still bring him food on nights when politics eat away at the hours he should have spent eating. I still stand in the quiet corners of rooms full of wolves who smile, while sharpening their intentions behind their backs. I am still, by every official measure, nobody of importance. But when the Alpha King enters a hall full of people who trust no one, his eyes still search first for the one quiet corner where I am standing, because it remains the only place in his entire kingdom where he can finally let his guard down and breathe. They trust no one in that court. Not truly. Not completely. Except me.